Hey everyone, Rob Van Dyson here again. Today is the 17th of January 2021, and I did a quick count, apparently episode 42 of my vlog. I don't have a name for my vlog yet, it's just my vlog, but this is episode 42 of it. So, right now, if you're not watching this live or if you are unaware, there's been a big push on a lot of the social media platforms, including YouTube, recently about censorship. And there has actually been a lot of censorship under the guise of quote unquote dangerous information and or terms of service. Now, this particular topic can get a little bit tricky when you think about it. These are essentially, or at least nominally, private institutions. You know, a private company is spending their money to put servers, software updates online for us to use. We're essentially playing in their sandbox. And I've done episodes before about about social media and my own personal feelings towards this. Well, this is going to be highly related to that, but well, on one hand, if it truly is a private company, I do think that they have a right to determine what goes onto their servers. But that's not truly what I want to talk about today. But it is adjacent to what I want to talk about today, which is your ability to say your mind. And there's a lot of big push by a lot of people to basically ban anything from being said that they don't agree with. I finally unsubscribed from that Star Wars podcast I talked about yesterday. And what really kind of pushed me over the edge with them was they are calling for the firing of an actress because she said some things that they don't agree with, having nothing to do with Star Wars, having nothing to do with her role in the show, just her opinions about things in life. And because they don't agree with what she is saying, they're calling for her to be blacklisted, to basically never be able to act again. Now, this isn't the first time in American history this has happened. The most famous instance of this happening was McCarthyism, which was, there's a Senator McCarthy. I don't recall everything about it. But shortly after World War II, where there was essentially what they referred to as the Red Scare, everyone was worried about communism, and it was this big push between communism and capitalism was how it was portrayed. And this senator actually pushed for lists of everyone who had anything to do with communism, who was a suspected communist sympathizer, and for them to create a blacklist where these people weren't allowed to do anything, basically trying to destroy their lives. Now, I personally don't think communism works as a form of government. I think on small scales, with everyone in a community actually wanting to live communistic principles, they can make it work. Small communes. But as a national government, I have yet to see it work, and I've just looking at history, you start to see how much evil was perpetrated in the guise of communism. Do I think capitalism is perfect? No, it's not. But I think it has far less, and I'm talking true capitalism, not crony capitalism or any of the other offshoots that or dilutions of the concept of capitalism. Anyway, when I was in high school, I heard this quote. And every once in a while, I'll have to look up who actually said it. But it was said by Voltaire. And the quote essentially said, I do not agree with a word you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. And that quote has stuck with me since high school. I graduated high school in 1997. I'm 41 years old. I graduated when I was 18. Actually, just before I turned 18. Now, when it comes to censorship, and I'm talking like true McCarthyism censorship, one, it doesn't work because you don't kill those ideas by censorship. You don't kill any idea by censorship. By saying you are not allowed to express this idea does not mean that that idea does not exist. It just means it doesn't get talked about in the public forum. And that is actually extremely, extremely dangerous. Because where does it get talked about? It gets talked about in private groups, mostly of people who feel the same way. And you end up with essentially an echo chamber where those ideas are never challenged. You never actually get to think about those ideas because they're never exposed to other people going, hey, wait a minute. What about this? What about that? And for other thinking people to be able to go, they got a point there. Instead, it just continues on and on and on, and the feelings get stronger and stronger until you eventually reach a boiling point. What happens from there? Well, it depends upon what happens when that pot boils over. There are a lot of people who I vehemently disagree with. There are people who I think are absolute idiots. There are ideas out there that I think are repulsive. I don't think they should be suppressed. An interesting little factoid. I grew up in Hawaii. And I grew up in a little town called Ewa Beach. And most of the schools I went to up until high school were predominantly locals. And when I say locals, I'm not just talking about Kama'ainas, people who live there permanently. But people of Hawaiian ancestry, people of other Polynesian ancestry. And you know what? I experienced, a good deal of racism. I was the haole. And especially because I was brought up to speak what is considered more of a proper form of English than Pidgin. And because I was raised in a very white culture, I didn't blend in. And so while there were other Howleys who adopted that culture, were able to fit in better, I wasn't. I was never able to truly fit in. And that didn't change until I went to Radford High School, which had a much higher Howley non-Kama'aina. A lot of these kids were military kids. Their family was there for however long their parents were stationed in Hawaii. My wife is half Tahitian. If you look at her, you could easily mistake her for full Tahitian. When she moved to Utah, when she was in school, I think she was in elementary school when she came over, she experienced a lot of racism. Have I experienced, the full hatred that some people have when it comes to race? No. I've experienced enough of it to have a flavor of it, though. And so, to me, racism is an issue that I am aware of. More than just, the average, quote unquote, white privileged person, who's never experienced it. I've experienced it. I watched my wife experience it even here, even now, in 2021. It's been so bad, there's actually even a factor of where would we move if we decided to leave the area we're in? Well, we don't want to go to certain areas because we know that there's a high case of racism against her because she's not white. But do I think those racists should be silenced? No. That just pushes it underground. The best way to combat an idea is to bring it into the light, to open it up to clear discussion. Now, are there people who are truly deeply racist, who you can show them all the facts, you can bring up all the points? Will it change their mind? No. It is rooted into them, and the chances of them letting it go are very, very slim. But if you push it underground, the chances of them changing are zero. And other people that they try and bring into the fold, when you start asking and bringing up points, they might be swayed. Or at least they might go, you know what, maybe everything that I'm being taught about this is not correct. Exposure and things of that nature. Truth is very much like ore. A lot of times when you first find it, it's not in a usable state. It's hardly in a recognizable state unless you know what you're looking for. But the way you turn iron ore into iron or even steel is you take that ore and you subject it, in the case of iron ore, heat. Lots and lots of heat. You put it through the test. You put it through the refiner's fire. That's actually where that term comes from, is taking ore and purifying it and refining the metal. And what happens with that heat is all of that other garbage that is attached to that ore, that goes into that foundry, slowly starts working its way out, slowly starts melting, slowly starts leaving. And in the case of iron, if you're doing Blue Marie steel, as all of that dross, as all of that impurity starts being forced out, it comes off in what's referred to as slag. And you pull out that slag, and you pull out that slag, and you just keep on putting ore in, and you keep on putting charcoal in. And slowly, all of the iron ore, all of the truth in this analogy starts coming together, and you end up with a bloom. Now, especially in some of the older methods of doing this, that bloom isn't pure. You have to work it. And so you take that bloom that is mostly pure, but not entirely pure, and you start working, you start massaging it, and you start, hammering it and beating on it. And slowly, a lot of those impurities start working their ways out. But not all of them. You'll still end up with impurities in wrought iron. Worked iron is, wrought being an old word for work. To work the metal, you make worked iron or wrought iron. But we have better ways now, where we subject it to more heat, and we're able to refine it even more, until eventually what you end up with is either pure iron or an alloy known as steel. And it's the same with truth. If you just take, iron ore, try and make a knife out of it, straight as it is, you're going to end up with a very poor knife. More likely, you're just going to end up with shards all over the place because of the impurities in there. And with truth, unless you are God and have an innate ability to know the truth, you are going to have to take information, and you are going to have to work it. You're going to have to subject it to the refiner's fire and break off everything that is easily to come off. And then you're going to have to sit there and you're going to have to work that iron. And as human beings, we're never going to end up with pure truth. At least not without some kind of divine intervention. And we always have to be aware that there are probably still impurities. No matter how much we work this idea to try and distill it down to truth, there are probably still going to be some impurities in there. Then as we find them, maybe we can start pulling them out. And we can keep on working, our ideas. And the more we work them, the more of a pure truth we're going to end up with. But you can't do that if you are not allowed to work it. You cannot do that if ideas are not allowed to be put out there. You just end up with suppressed ideas. Everyone thinks the black market is all about illegal goods. And usually when you're saying black market, it is about illegal goods. But you know what? One of the number one thing in the most oppressive regimes that gets traded on the black market? Ideas, concepts, thoughts, information. And whether that be in something like pamphlets, prescribed books. There's apparently a video out there called something to the effect of Chuck Norris versus communism, or Chuck Norris takes down communism. And the entire premise was these guys were getting their hands on cheesy Chuck Norris movies. Not just Chuck Norris movies, but cheesy 80s movies. A lot of them did focus on Chuck Norris. And they're distributing them. They were making copies and distributing them illegally on the black market. Now, I don't know if these guys had any thought of anything other than this is entertainment that's prescribed. that's better than what we have. Let's put it out there and make some money off of it. But a lot of the concepts that were built into those movies, good and bad, made their way into thousands of homes in communist Russia where it was illegal to have those videos. Ideas can't be killed. You can suppress them, but in a lot of ways that just makes them stronger. Anyway, this has been a bit of a rant video. As you can tell, it's something I'm kind of passionate about. Something I have some very strong feelings on, and I could probably go on for an hour or more on this. But I think I've said what needs to be said. But I will actually add this one other thing. Let's go back to racism. So right now, anything that can be construed as racism, whether it is racist or not, can get you censored, deplatformed, depending upon how far it goes right now. Does that mean that there are no racists on these platforms? Are there no racists on Facebook? No, there's plenty of them. Most of them that are still on there just know to keep their mouth shut when it comes to stuff like this. But they're still there. And if you're someone who feels like I do about racism, wouldn't you want to know that that person that you're having these big long conversations from, that person that maybe you're going out and hanging out with, is actually a racist? But in this platform, in this environment, you'll probably never know unless he happens to say something to you offline. And so you can know someone for years and think you know them pretty well, but then find out, no, they actually have this one side that you know nothing about. That's true of a lot of things, not just racism. But if they're suppressed, you'll never know. But the idea will still be there. Anyways, this is Rob Van Dyson once again from Hobble Creek. And instead of my usual call to action, my call to action is for you to think about this. Do you agree with the censorship? Do you agree that it's their right on their platform? What are your true thoughts on this mass move for censorship, including taking other platforms that don't censor what people say and trying to destroy them, which did happen. Happened last weekend. Anyways, think about it, please. And let me know your thoughts in the comments. Alright, Van Dyson out.